All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're tracking the absolutely wild 80-year survival story of Sega. Most of us probably just know them for a certain blue blur with an attitude, but their corporate history is this fascinating roller coaster that goes all the way from building slot machines for military bases to becoming a global gaming and transmedia conglomerate. It's a story of incredible innovation, staggering hubris, and miraculous survival. We're going to cover a lot of ground today. We'll go from jukeboxes to global arcades, through the great console wars, down into their hardware downfall, their massive third-party pivot, and finally, the modern transmedia era. So, part 1, jukeboxes to global arcades. We're starting at the very beginning, way before Sonic ever grabbed a single gold ring. Believe it or not, Sega actually started back in the 1940s as an American company supplying slot machines and jukeboxes to U.S. military bases in Japan. After a crazy maze of corporate mergers, we're talking companies like Rosen Enterprises and Nihon Gorikabusen, they finally mashed together in 1965 to officially become Sega Enterprises. Now, the real game changer hit when Sega realized they couldn't just import games forever, they had to actually build them. Boom, 1966, they drop an electromechanical arcade game called Periscope. It was this massive, totally immersive submarine simulator, and it just blew up worldwide. It was such a smash that it caught the eye of the American giant Gulf and Western, who swooped in and bought Sega in 1969, giving them the cash they needed to really go big. Fast forward to the 80s and 90s, and Sega is literally setting the gold standard for arcades everywhere. I mean, they weren't just making games, they were inventing totally new ways to experience them. We're talking the birth of 3D polygonal graphics with Virtua Fighter, force feedback steering wheels in Daytona, USA, where you could actually feel the road, and who could forget those giant R360 cabinets that physically spun you upside down? It was wild. They were the undisputed kings in the arcade, no question. Which brings us to part 2, the Great Console Wars. After a management buyout in the 80s, Sega decided they wanted a piece of the living room, looking straight at Nintendo's massive market share. So they just started firing off hardware. You had the 8-bit SG-1083, the Master System right after, but the real heavy hitter, the 16-bit Mega Drive, or the Genesis as it was known in the States, in 1988, not to mention the portable Game Gear. They were iterating at lightning speed. But hey, great hardware is nothing without a killer app, right? Enter Sonic the Hedgehog in 1991. Sonic was a masterclass in mascot design. He was fast, to show off the Genesis's processing power, and he had this edgy, cool attitude that totally flipped the script on Nintendo's squeaky clean image. Sonic was the cultural explosion Sega needed to aggressively market their consoles and actually steal a huge chunk of the global market. But then, things take a turn. Part 3. The hardware downfall. You know how sometimes too much success goes straight to a company's head? Well, by the mid to late 90s, Sega was suffering from a massive split personality. On one hand, they're still crushing it in the arcades, but at home, total disaster. They started drowning their own consumers in expensive, confusing add-ons. Remember the Sega CD and the 32X? And then they totally botched the Saturn, doing this surprise premature launch that essentially alienated retailers, shattered consumer trust, and pushed away game developers. So, with their backs against the wall, Sega rolls the dice one last time with the Dreamcast in 1998. And honestly, it was brilliant. It had built-in online gaming right out of the box, memory cards with their own little screens called VMUs, just incredible innovation. But a devastating mix of supply chain issues, a lack of major third-party developers, and some really fatal vulnerabilities to software piracy pretty much doomed it, especially with the PlayStation 2 looming on the horizon. People often call it the console of the avant-garde, and it really was. Even though it failed commercially, the Dreamcast is still that ultimate what-if in gaming history. It pushed creative boundaries way out there, gave us insanely quirky, beloved games, and totally predicted the always-online console future we live in today. But here's the harsh reality. Being avant-garde doesn't pay the electric bill. By the year 2000, the back-to-back failures of the Saturn and Dreamcast had Sega staring down catastrophic financial losses of over 100 billion yen. They were actively hemorrhaging cash, and the whole company was quite literally on the brink of collapse. So put yourself in their shoes, facing near-certain bankruptcy and an absolute mountain of debt. How does a company actually survive that?
Well, it takes an 11th hour miracle and a brutal, complete teardown of everything they thought they were.
Which brings us to their incredible rebirth. Part 4, the third-party pivot. $695 million. That is the size of the personal stock gift donated by Sega's chairman, Isao Okawa, literally right before he passed away in 2001. He gave his own personal wealth to forgive the company's debts to him and wipe out over $500 million in corporate losses. It is this unprecedented, miraculous act of generosity that kept Sega from just shutting its doors forever. Saved from the abyss, Sega had to swallow their pride and make 3 massive changes. Number 1, in 2001, they ripped the Band-Aid off and completely exited the console hardware business, officially killing the Dreamcast. Number 2, they became a third-party software publisher. I mean, seeing Sonic on a Nintendo console? A few years earlier, that would have been unthinkable. And 3, in 2004, they merged with Sammy Corporation, a giant in the Japanese pachinko and amusement machine space, which finally locked in their financial stability. With Sammy watching their back, Sega went on the offensive over the next 20 years to rebuild their software lineup. They went on an absolute shopping spree, snapping up major studios all over the world. They grabbed Strategy Master's Creative Assembly in 2005, Sports Interactive in 2006, the RPG Legends at Atlas in 2013, and just recently, mobile giant Rovio Entertainment in 2023. They successfully morphed from a beaten-down hardware maker into a massively diversified software publisher. And that leads us right up to today, Part 5, the modern transmedia era. Sega isn't just a video game company anymore. They are a full-on transmedia powerhouse. They're taking their classic IPs and turning them into massive pop culture hits. We're talking blockbuster live-action Sonic movies, the Sonic Prime animated series on Netflix, a live-action Yakuza show on Prime Video, plus they're still running those giant Joypolis indoor theme parks in Asia. They're grabbing the attention of whole new generations of kids who have probably never even seen a Sega Genesis. And on the games front, their revenue stream is super interesting right now. Looking at their FY26 financials, they pulled in 67.2 billion yen from premium, full game sales, think games like Persona and Football Manager, and an almost equal 53.7 billion yen from free-to-play mobile titles. It's a really balanced, diversified way to make money in modern gaming. But it's not all sunshine and gold rings. In that exact same FY26 report, Sega actually posted a $31.6 million net loss. Why? Well, they took a massive $200 million impairment hit connected to buying Rovio, the Angry Birds folks. Basically, that huge mobile investment just hasn't been returning the kind of cash they were expecting. So what did they do? They pivot again. Right now, Sega is officially pulling the plug on their so-called Super Game initiative, which was supposed to be this massive billion-dollar online project. Instead, they're moving over 100 developers out of the tricky free-to-play mobile space and putting them back to work on the premium, full-game franchises that they know for a fact are successful. Sega's 80-year roller coaster is just unbelievable. It really proves that sometimes you have to completely demolish your own identity, even the very hardware that made you a legend, just to keep the lights on. From military-based jukeboxes to arcades, through near bankruptcy to Hollywood blockbusters, they just keep surviving. So as they make yet another huge strategic pivot today, I'll leave you with this. What defining era of Sega's relentless survival story will inspire their next chapter? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning out there.